Dear chess friends, the exchange variation of the Queen's Gambit decline is one of the most often but also one of the most powerful variations that White is playing in d4 theory. Basically, after d4, d5, c4, and d6 and c takes d5, White is undermining the pressure in the center, gets, I think, a healthy pawn structure and has, I think, normal strategic ideas. One of the basic concepts of the exchange variation from White's perspective is to reach this kind of a position, maybe not the same, but maybe also with a different move order, but the basic goal is to create this f3 e4 breakthrough motif. So the e4 is the main strategic concept of the Queen's Gambit decline exchange variation, but the move e4 is the main idea, is the main plan of White's, but actually it can also become his main disaster. Actually, this move e4 can also become the main mistake by White in an early stage of the game. Probably many of us are bothered by this idea of White. So this e4 breakthrough comes with really enormous pressure in the center of the board. Also, we have to notice in these types of positions, White has already a good setup with the pieces. Look at this, knight is centralized, knight on c3 is good, bishop on d3 is good, bishop on f2 is protecting the king. So this e4 could really bother you. So in this video we are solving now the problems of the move e4 with really some cool tactical ideas, but also with cool opening traps that I think you could use in your own games. I think this is now a very important study in our Queen's Gambit decline exchange variation studies. So let's see now how to reach this position, and then we'll talk about these problems of the e4 because, as I said, this e4 can be really a huge mistake by White in the continuation of the game. So the first move is of course the move d4. We go d5 after c4. In my opinion, the Queen's Gambit decline, instead of this move c6, which would lead into the Slav defense, is much more powerful, because the Slav defense could be met with maybe with the exchange variation of the Slav defense. It's not the same story, because many times we have a two symmetrical pawn structure here, and we want to maybe get our bishop out on g4. When that happens, notice queen to b3 is dangerous, hitting the pawn on b7. So that's why I would recommend you first of all to go with the move e6. Now after move knight to c3, we play knight to f6, and now after the exchange variation with c takes d5 and e takes d5, the pawn structure is not symmetrical anymore. It's an asymmetrical pawn structure, which creates of course new opportunities, new attacking possibilities for both sides now in the game. And now when we get our bishop out maybe to g4, we can protect the queen to b3 move with maybe c6 and queen to b6. So it's a different story. We still have four pawns, and even if the queens are traded off somehow on b6, still we have a healthy pawn structure on the queen side. So it's, in my opinion, much more powerful to play the Queen's Gambit decline than maybe to go into the Slav defense. So now White is going to play bishop to g5 many times, and there are basically two good approaches of blacks here, c6 or bishop to e7. Here c6 is the continuation, and now e3. Notice that if you play bishop to f5, White will have, I think, a good game after queen to f3 or queen to b3. So that's why don't get out with your light square bishop too early. It has been played. There are many also great games by black, but we have discussed also the problems of bishop to f5 already in our Queen's Gambit decline exchange studies. So in my opinion, the queen to f3 move is now the most powerful idea, getting attack against the knight twice. So it's, in my opinion, not such a good line here for black. So after move e3, we are playing normal development, bishop to e7, and now White will play bishop to d3 or queen to c2, preventing finally this move bishop to f5 by black. Black would love to play bishop to f5, would have a great control of the e4 square. So that's why with queen to c2 or bishop to d3, as we said, White is preventing bishop to f5. We have h6, a common move, because after bishop to h4, in some of these variations, as we said, White goes many times with the move f3, gets also sometimes the king on f2. So there are maybe some tactical threats with knight to e4 and then to get trap somehow the bishop. This tactical motif will not be discussed in this particular video, but notice sometimes there are some tensions against the bishop on h4. So as I said, it will not happen now in this particular video, but many times just search for maybe cool opportunities against the darker bishop of White. So here the continuation, we castle. Now after move f3, as we said, knight to e2, and now e4 is the main preparation. We go knight from b to d7, normal development, and now white gets out of the attack with the move bishop to f2. So you see, so far, white is not rushing with the move e4. e4 would be simply too aggressive with the king in the center. White is going to first secure the king by castling, and then will try to launch the central breakthrough with the move e4. Now we play rook to e8. Very important move. So far we are not allowing again e4. If e4 happens, then of course again the king is in danger. So that's why white continues now with the move knight to e2, and now we play a very important move a5, because this move a5 we have also discussed so far in our exchange variation Queen's Gambit decline studies. This move a5 is slowing down the potential minority attack of white. White wants to play a3 b4 also in some occasions, so there are basically two plans that white can play here. It's of course this central breakthrough that we have already discussed, and also this a3 b4 method to play here also on the queen side, and of course with b5 trying to split the pawn chain here that we have on the queen side, creating also structural weaknesses, maybe also some weak squares on c5 or b6. So it's also a common method, the minority attack in the Queen's Gambit decline exchange variation. So here kingside casting, now we play b5, and this move is very important. As we also discussed, this move seems like a strange idea, but if b4 in any case happens, if white manages somehow to be aggressive with a3 b4, notice that we have a nice maneuver, knight to b6, knight to c4. This would be then our plan, and then we could have here a nice grip around the square c4, and would also control further maybe the square e3. So now for instance, if e4 happens, look at this. As we said, we are discussing now the move e4 as a potential strategic plan of white. e4 in this particular position is not so good. It seems tempting. It seems that white has enough activities here. It seems that white has enough compensation for this move e4. But actually, after d takes e4, what white can do is, of course, to play knight to e4. But this continuation, in my opinion, is not working, because you're leaving yourself an isolated d pawn, which is a strategic disadvantage, and basically that's not your plan. You wanted to play f takes e4. You wanted to have this powerful center where we have two connected pawns in the center of the board. So it's a different story. Now we play knight to b6, knight to d5. We play a really compact position around the square d5, create sort of a blockade. The blockade idea is the best idea, I think, against the isolated pawn. So in my opinion, nothing spectacular here for white, although it's an equal game. But I think I would love to play now this game from black's perspective, as I said, with the common plan of regrouping around the square d5. So even if f takes e4 happens here, we have discussed also this early e4 move that could be really the main plan of white, but actually, as I said, it can be also here white's main mistake, because we have now this one. Knight to g4 is, in my opinion, a good continuation here for black. You cannot escape, of course, from this attack of the knight. You get knight to e3, the fork against the rook and the queen. So you have to give up now your Darsko bishop, and your Darsko bishop is a very important piece here. If you stay, if you lose it, of course, then queen to b6 could happen. Bishop to f6 could be a further attack against the weak square on weak pawn on d4. So in my opinion, it's simply not so good to give up your such a powerful bishop in the continuation of the game. So now after move b5, here in one of my games, we're analyzing now one of my games. I think it's a decent game here against the exchange variation of the Queen's Gambit decline. My opponent prepared the move play further the move h3, preparing now the move e4 again, because now of course this main goal, knight to g4, is not working anymore. But now I play bishop to a6, and this is a very important move, because what we're trying to do is b4, and with the move bishop to a6, I'm trying here to trade off the bad piece. I have a really bad piece, the bishop on c8. It's paralyzed a little bit by the small pawn chain that we have here, d5, c6, b5. So that's why I want to trade it off for really a powerful bishop on d3. The bishop on d3 is actually the best minor piece of white. So that's why we are trying to trade it off with some ideas of b4, and then of course go into a simplified line. So for instance, if your opponent now plays queen to c2, he can do it. We can play queen to b6. Now for instance, if he plays e4 again, notice, as we said in the beginning, his main goal can be can become actually his main problem here, because after e4 we play now b4. That's now the cool part. After bishop to a6 we have queen to a6, the knight has to step back, knight to a4, and now we play d takes e4. After f takes e4, it seems maybe that something went wrong here for us, because we have here we allowed here white to create this powerful center, but there is now this liberating line that I would recommend you. It's now the beautiful move c5, and this move you have to know. Notice there are several tensors here. After d takes c5, we have here already an attack against the pawn 3 times, and also we have here the queen a little bit overloaded to the pawn on c5, to the knight on e2, but also to the pawn on e4. And we have now great attacking chances. In my opinion, rook from a to c8 is a powerful idea. We have a triple attack against the pawn on c5. We are attacking the knight on e2, and we are attacking the pawn on e4. Here, black is already better. We have a great activity. Look at this. We have occupied the open files. We have a nice attack. In the continuation of the game, maybe knight to f4 can happen, but now look at this. With queen to c6, we are continuing the pressure against this pawn, against the knight. We have again the 4 times attack against the pawn on c5, and look at this. When we finally get rid of this pawn on c5, then notice that your opponent will be left with an isolated e-pawn. So we split the pawn chain. That was the strength in the beginning of whites, but now I think we are taking over here. So as I said, after queen to c2, queen to b6, e4, that was the main goal of white, becomes actually, as I said, again, his main problem. So here in one of my games, rook to e1 was played here by my opponent. I played simply bishop to d6, controlling e4 again, and my opponent tried e4. I simply played b4, which is also a common idea. Bishop to a6, rook to a6, and now he tried e5, but I simply took the knight, pardon me. After d takes c3, I took also this pawn. This one pawn was weak. So again, I hope you realize the strategic concept. We are splitting the pawn chain. We're not allowing him here to have dynamics in the center of the board. So again, e4 didn't work. So here, after move bishop to a6 that I played in one of my games, my opponent played e4 immediately. So he played e4 without even playing queen to c2, without even playing rook to e1, without even preparing for the move e4. But again, e4 is not so good, because again we have this idea: d takes e4, after f takes e4. Now it seems that this is good for white, because now white didn't lose any time here. White didn't lose any time to regroup, just played e4 immediately. But again, our main strategic goal with b4 is working. After knight to a4, now you can guess the move. Again, c5. c5 is the main liberating motif here. Please memorize it. c5 is actually working here. That's now the cool part, because look at this. In my game, one of my games, my opponent tried d takes e5. I played knight to c5, and notice the knight is protecting also the bishop on a6. So if bishop to a6 happens, pardon me, first of all, let's see this continuation, knight to c5. If that happens, then we have, of course, this one, bishop to c5. After bishop to a6, we first, of course, take bishop takes f2. It comes with the check. And now after queen to d1, rook to a6, we will play rook to e6. And again, we play against the isolated pawn. I'm not saying this is completely winning for black, but this is a solid position. The evaluation is +1 in black's favor. I'm not seeing good ways how black is going to defend this e4 pawn. So there's already too much pressure around the square e4. White would lose the pawn in a couple more moves. We have a better activity with our rooks, so in my opinion, this is a completely lost game here for white. So after move knight to c5 that I played, my opponent tried this one, bishop to a6. I played knight to a6. Here in the continuation, he tried e5, and this was now huge mistake. Here I wanted to show you again a really nice opening trap here, or middle game strategy trap sort of. Here after move e5, I played knight to e4, and now after queen to c2, knight takes f2, which really makes sense. Rook takes f2, and now a very important move now to recognize. Don't make this mistake. You will probably reach this position many times, maybe in a different move, or maybe even not the same, but with the main tactical motif. Now comes a dirty queen to d5. please memorize this move, centralizing the queen, even allowing knight to b6. Look at this. This move we are allowing, it doesn't matter, because if, for instance, rook to d1 happens, then of course the pawn on a2 is hanging. So this is not good. So this is not working here for white. So after move queen to d5, my opponent played now knight to b6, but now first of all we play queen to e5, and after knight to a8 we have this one, bishop to c5 comes in a beautiful way into the game. And look at this, this knight is hanging, this knight is hanging, and the rook is under fire. So please memorize this method with queen to d5. This is a must move for you to play. It's, in my opinion, taking over here. White doesn't have even so many great chances. We are attacking simply the weak isolated pawn here that we created by playing in the move c5 in the first place. So as I said, very, very important study here. So here, as I said, knight to b6, queen to e5, bishop to c5, rook to f1, and now I played this one, queen takes e2. In the continuation of the game, my opponent tried queen to c5. We took now the queen, he took now also here the queen on e2, but now after rook to e2 I have again a position in which I have an extra pawn. My opponent tried rook to f2. I simply traded off more pieces and grabbed also the pawn on b2. So this was now of course completely winning endgame here for me. So after king to d4 I simply pushed the pawn further, knight to b6, now I played a3, knight to c4, and now a very important move b3, creating here a passer. We have now knight takes a3, but now after b takes a2, my opponent has always something to worry about. He has to include further the king into the defense, and while the king is deflected towards the queen side, I have of course time to get my knight to the king side, and this is still a good game. So knight to c2, I play simply knight to d1. He tried to get his king closer, I always escaped, and now after a couple of moves, after knight to f4, here in this position, he actually resigned. There's no good defense against this attack against the pawn on g2. If you play g4, of course this one is hanging. So it's basically that this pawn is holding the knight and the king, and my knight and the king can play of course freely, get simply attacks against this pawn. We have here of course also a pawn majority, so it's completely winning. So key motifs here, as I said, after let's go back to this critical moment. After bishop to a6, your opponent is playing e4, we take d takes e4, f takes e4. Don't panic, nothing spectacular happened here. We play b4. After knight to a4, c5, c5, c5. Very important move. After a couple of moves, we can reach this position, and after e5, we play knight to e4. Very important to get rid of the bishop, which is the key defender of the king, and now queen to d5. Go after this pawn. You saw that your dark square bishop will become really the most powerful piece on the board, so it's a completely messed up game here for white. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the study. It's very important to battle against the move e4. As I said, don't panic against this move. It's nothing spectacular. You didn't make any mistakes. This is common strategy. This is common plan. But you have counterattack opportunities on the queen side, and then afterwards with this aggressive method with the move c5. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed the studies. As I said, if you want to see more about the Queen's Gambit declined exchange variation, check out also my series of the whole Queen's Gambit declined. We have here the Harvard's attack, Chigorin defense, Tara's defense, semi-Tara's defense, and many more. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.